Hello you guys, so I'm back, and some stuff I forgot to mention from my last video is I read 62 books this year, and I'm going to be counting 10 books that I absolutely hated on this list. So in the end, I'm mentioning 28 books in my top 10 videos this year, so that's pretty much almost half, but yeah, this year was pretty good, but I still found some stinkers that I just hope I forget in the future, but in the meantime, it's still fun to talk about them with you. Making best and worst videos are pretty much equal in their delight. It's true, it's kind of harder to read the worst books, but it's fun to rant about them. But I know that this is probably going to be a controversial video because a lot of the books I'm going to mention have a fan base. Some of them are really loved by a lot of people, so just keep in mind this is my own opinion, and if you like these books, then that's fantastic. And if you think that my opinion is not right for you and you still think this book is going to be good, then I encourage you to read it and see for yourself. But anyway, for those who just want to avoid a book that's really not, I think, going to really be enjoyable or is not going to really help reluctant readers, these are my top 10 books that gave me the least amount of pleasure. So coming in at number 10 is Golden, Heart of Dread. After my rant on Stolen, Heart of Dread last year, it was number 2 if you hadn't seen the video. I'm sure you probably guessed this book would be on the list somewhere. I guess after I gave 2 stars to Frozen and 0 stars to Stolen, it would be kind of inevitable I would give thumbs down to this one, which is a little bit unfair. I read every book knowing that this could either be a 0 or a 4 or anything in between. But basically, Golden is not as bad as Stolen is, surprisingly. Well, I mean, I haven't read a lot of books that are as bad as Stolen, but I mean, Golden is the most action-packed Heart of Dread in the series. Maybe because it's the shortest, I don't know, but it does have a very long, nice action sequence. But that can't really deter from the fact that a lot of this just doesn't make sense, or a lot of it is just some stuff that I preferred never happened. For instance, one of the things that doesn't make sense is near the beginning when a character supposedly loses his memory but then fakes it out. It seems like they changed their minds a little too early on that. I'm glad that there was an action scene just like that, and I'm glad that it was a fake out because of story progression, but, well, it seems like they just changed their mind a lot. But there's also the fact that there's a character that tries to stop these two characters from going somewhere, and then it's revealed that she knew that they would rebel. That doesn't really make sense. She knew that the people would come and terrorize her place. One of the things that I really liked about the series is, well, the garbage country and the characters trying to get out of it. And they finally do get out of it, but not satisfyingly. And there are too many moments where I feel like Nat and Wes have been through enough. It's time to just get away from the relationship stuff and just go to the Draken, break the curse, even though I thought it was already broken. I guess I just wasn't paying attention enough. And, well, the ending is different, but just not very satisfying. But I didn't hate it as much as Stolen, so that's why it's at number 10. That, and there are 9 other books I hated even more. So coming in at number 9 is Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi. You know, I was skeptical to start Shatter Me, but I ended up devouring it in only about 3 days. I originally gave it a 2.5, but I think it's more of a 3-star book. A 3 out of 4, not 3 out of 5. I loved the crossouts. They're so imaginative. They let us really get a glimpse into what's going on in Juliet's head. It's original, and I loved her writing style, and it was action-packed. Then Unravel Me kind of sagged a little bit, but it still promised a very good ending, and we didn't get it. We got something even worse than Unravel Me. A first flaw is, there's a character in Unravel Me that asks why not just assassinate the leader. Kenji has an explanation, but that's exactly what they do here. And it's And the last sentence of Unravel Me was perfect. It's an exemplary type of cliffhanger, and Ignite Me just didn't promise that. There's also the fact that Tahereh Mafi got rid of the crossouts. I know that that was to show that Juliet was no longer in denial of everything and now she's fierce. She is not going to have any more second thoughts, but I always like those crossouts. So when we finally get to the ending we've been waiting for, it just seems like Tahereh Mafi doesn't understand how big her world is that she made in the first Shatter Me, and there's a chapter that only goes through 2 sentences. They're called Once for Adam, Once for Warner. And I thought, oh, is that really, No. Tahereh Mafi actually had a very interesting twist on her hands, and she didn't take advantage of it at all. If she did, then this wouldn't have been on the list, but alas, the Shatter Me series goes off on a low note. But in the end, I think that the Shatter Me trilogy is one that is readable, which is why it's at number 9. Now coming in at number 8 is a book that I originally gave 1.5 stars to, but it's more like a 1. It's Shallow Graves by Callie Wallace. This is apparently her debut. Better luck next time. Basically, this book is about a girl named Breezy who woke up buried in the ground by a foot of dirt and woke up with, I don't know, pale skin. She apparently can see shadows whenever someone apparently killed another human being, and she doesn't know how she got here, and everything she eats and drinks just tastes like dust. It turns out people see her as a monster. I was actually excited for this because I thought this would be a Scooby-Doo-esque mystery as to how Breezy got there, but it's more like Breezy getting used to the fact that she's now a monster, and I really didn't like that. Around page 300, Breezy asks someone to hurry up with something. That's exactly how I felt. I didn't really understand the mystery. There are a ton of backstories that I just didn't care about because they seem to just drag and be filler. And, well, I admit, the shadow idea for killing murderers is different, but basically, what really put this up to my worst list is a choice Breezy makes. It's the worst possible. I hated it, and I hated her for it. It completely doesn't make sense. It's completely inhuman. Now coming in at number 7 is 10 Things I Hate About Me by Randa Abdel Fattah, which is about a girl named Jamila who disguises herself as a non-Muslim at her high school because she's worried people will pick on her. And, well, she basically hides it from her devout Muslim father, and things get a little interesting when a racist guy asks her out, and she starts to make friends with this very uncool but cool little dude named Timothy, and meets someone on the internet, but, well, it starts out good. I thought that I was gonna like this book at first when there's a terrific argument between Jamila and her dad. Then it just repeats it, and repeats it, and repeats it. Honestly, Jamila should just stop asking permission. She should just sneak out every once in a while. Otherwise, we just feel like we're grounded along with Jamila. And I basically read this because I was interested in Muslim culture, and it did deliver on some of the questions I had, like now I know who Allah is. But that doesn't really excuse the fact that it was predictable, and the father seemed a little too stereotypical for my taste. And there's also the fact that when Jamila finally gets a few privileges, she still seems to be a little cranky about everything. Like, she's allowed to go someplace, and I think that should be enough for her. She should not say, there's no way I'm going in that, but that's the sort of thing she says. But it all could have been fine if it just wrapped up nicely. Nope, I think this is one of the worst endings I've read about all year. The ending is the most important part of your book, and Randa Abdel Fattah completely missed the mark on this one. Just, I'm sorry, I didn't want to hate this book. I tend to hate books about, well, other cultures for some reason, and I don't mean to. Just, this is another entry I really didn't like. So, coming in at number 6 is one of the biggest disappointments of the year, Siegen Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I actually bought Shadow and Bone, and I thought it was a very easy page-turner. The end actually felt like a video game fantasy, and one where I was in control of Alina. I was running through the woods, I was hiding from the Darkling, people were surrounding me, and with a very interesting ending that I thought would shred a lot of controversy for the people of Vagra. I'm sorry, right now I have too many thoughts in my mind to even remember the world because Siegen Storm knocked the wind out of me too much to care about this series much anymore. But this was a slogfest and didn't really go anywhere despite the expansion on the beautiful map at the beginning, which promised adventure but didn't. And there's also the fact there's a character who was very mysterious that I was curious about. This book didn't take advantage of her at all. Just the magic, the adventure, the excitement is completely gone. Leigh Bardugo completely missed the mark on this one. I'm going to read Ruin and Rising, but this book made Ruin and Rising straight to the bottom of my TBR. Even Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which are apparently so praised and so amazing, I even neglected to read those for a while, and I still haven't read them yet because Siegen Storm was so bad. Just plain boring. So now coming in at number 5 is Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater. I had been thinking about this book for about 2 years, mainly because one time I flipped through it in grade 9, I realized the blue font, and just Shiver. Not a bad title at all, not too shabby. And what I got was, well, that was not what I expected. It takes more than a temperature updater and a font change to really make you care about a book, especially since it seems to be for the Bella Jacob fanbase that died about 8 years ago. I haven't done the math. But let's just say that this book is about a curse, and the characters are too plain for us to really care about them. Too much books from the library stuff, too much You're Like a Song that I never heard before. Those were actually clever, but in the end it's all romance, no bite, and the temperature just made me feel cold for some reason. I know that it's original, but I guess it was just way too slow a book. But here's where Shiver really got on my nerves. There's a character whose dog is killed, and she's mad about it. Not sad, mad. I had a dog of 10 years ago who died at age 12. Yeah, it's one of the saddest things to witness in your life. You don't say, you ran over my dog? No, you sob, you care. You think about him or her for hours, for months. You'd not just pass it off. That was just bad writing, I guess. And so when I finally got through this after convincing myself to not DNF it for about 5 times, there's a sequel called Linger and has another viewpoint. I'd rather not linger anymore in this series since Linger seems to be what Shiver does for pretty much the entire book. Now coming in at number 4 is The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury. Honestly, I think this book had some okay ideas, even if one of them and the main one was a complete knockoff of Shatter Me, but that knockoff convinced me to try and read this. Right from the start, I knew I probably wasn't going to enjoy this. Twila, or Twyla, however you want to call it, she's never really in any real danger. The fact that she's the Sin Eater's daughter, the Sin Eater is just a disgusting idea. It's also just plain ew when a mom tries to marry her son, and it's kind of unbelievable how evil the mother is. She doesn't even respect the father one bit. The father just is such a wimp. There's never really any backstory to this. It's never, well, it isn't never. It became clear who Leaf and Merrick were, but by then I thought Leaf was the king and Merrick was the servant. It was all twisted up, and there were too many sentences that made no sense. Like one time Leaf says, "You were the first, when I was 6, you were the first person I ever saw after my sister," or whatever. He's 6 years old. How could he have not seen any other person for 6 whole years? But I was actually close to giving this a little higher on the list, as in like number 10, or maybe even not on the list at all, because it had an interesting ending. Well, it promised an interesting sequel. And then it goes back on it in one of the worst epilogues possible. I was about to go out and just skim through the Sleeping Prince, No, this book took back on its promises, and it didn't make me desperate for more like the book promises. Not at all. The only reason it isn't lower on the list is because it's shorter, so therefore kind of easier to get through than my bottom 3. Now coming in at number 3 is a book where it's the only book in this list where I actually have a hard copy. It's Tiger's Curse by Colleen Houck. Back in February I ranted about this book. Yeah, it was first on my worst list for quite a while until my number 1. And I know this is number 3, but number 2 I hadn't read till later, but basically, yeah, I just don't want to keep going with this book. I want to forget this book altogether. It was so painful trying to skim through the last few pages. I was basically dying from boredom and dying from, oh come on, throughout the end. There is one chapter that's okay, one that's action-packed, one where the characters almost drown, but there's way too much hiking, way too many details, way too much romance, way too much sleeping around, and Kelsey never really goes around India with its poverty. It feels like this only shows the rich part of India and not the poor, which I think is a bogus way of representing the country. And well, the fact that the antagonist is, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say this book promised something, and it never delivered. Never. And there are some good ideas, like this amulet that prevents aging and pain a little bit, and this interesting instant food thingamajig, and this snake charm that reminded me a bit of Percy Jackson, but this book is so boring and so slow that there's never really any time to appreciate Colleen Houck's interesting ideas, and, well, I feel like the next few books, these books are so long, and thinking about spending hours reading the next few books is too painful to think about. Okay, now, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this next one, but number 2 on my list, even worse than Tiger's Curse, is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I was so stoked for this high fantasy. It turns out Laini Taylor writes kind of like Shakespeare, in a way that got outdated 4 centuries ago. The writing was so over the top and weird, my eyes were hurting. And I know that I bet she was trying to be fancy, but it got in the way of the plot to a fault. I all of a sudden never knew what was going on, never understood the intentions of these characters. I didn't even get a clear shot of what the Seraphim and Chimera were supposed to look like, even though they're mentioned all throughout the book. And also, a character doesn't just drop out of school just like that, like this book does. No, that's a really tough choice, even if apparently you have to go from your home through the doors to elsewhere from everywhere. And the idea of the doors being marked and Caro can't open them anymore, and the idea of Akiva, the idea of flying, and the wishes and the teeth, they're all interesting ideas. Honestly, they all are. But you know how I know all of that? I read some Goodreads reviews after this book just to skim, and, well, they had more detail. I started to understand the book much better after reading those than the actual book. I feel like Laini Taylor did have a good story. She had an interesting story, but these characters have such weird names, which I guess might be intentional since Karu is from Prague, but Zuzana, Liraz, Thiago, L.A., completely unmemorable and weird, and I couldn't visualize a single character, not even Brimstone, and I couldn't wait for this book to end. And then it ends in the worst way I think a teen's book can end, in a flashback. A flashback that was so painful and had a character daydreaming or something, and just had a character on their wedding day. It was supposed to be a big realization, and maybe it came, but the details were so distracting that overall, when I put this book down, I was so relieved it was finally over. Yeah, I might read Days of Blood and Starlight because of the interesting story that I got from the reviews rather than the book, but that's a very big if, and I'm very prepared to be giving that a very low grade just like this book. But there's one book I hated even more than Daughter of Smoke and Bone. Now coming in at last place is The Glass Arrow by Kristen Simmons. I've read about 175 books over the past 2.5 years. I can't remember many that are as bad as The Glass Arrow. This is a book basically about how women are now treated as slaves again just to give birth to kids, and everyone hopes they're men. They're basically all machines. And before you say this was back in like a past century or a past millennium or something, yeah, a character has a big video game where he shoots deer or shoots humans or whatever, I forget, and yet everyone has horses. This is completely mixed up. It's like 1990 and 990 all mixed together, and it's never clear what year it is. The book also spends so much time in flashbacks grieving over these characters that die very early in the book, but we didn't get to spend enough time with them. We didn't get to spend time with them before the chase at the beginning to really understand them, to really care about them at all. And when chapter 1 comes up and it says that Aya has been locked up for like 100 and something days, yeah, once again it seems to copy off Shatter Me completely, except it's much, much worse than that. And the Shatter Me's was okay. Let me think of some other bad things about this book. Well, there's also the fact that in the first 100 pages, it's just recapture, recapture, recapture. What I said in my review was, it was like Kristen Simmons kept rolling the dice waiting for a 7. And there's also a character named Amir, and when he came in, I became a little bit interested in it. There was supposed to be a twist up, I completely predicted it. Maybe when I'm in a bad mood, I guess I predict stuff, like I predicted the twist in 10 Things I Hate About Me or something. I don't know, but I did predict it from a mile away. When it did happen, well, I thought, okay, this book could get better, even though I kept thinking, no, I can't believe for a second that I think my life will get better being with these people. Well, maybe you shouldn't have been so dismissive. I know about your life before, but considering how messed up the world is right now, I would just take my chances. It doesn't sound like too bad a life for now. You could give it a chance. But no, it was once again back to recapture, 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 and it didn't utilize Amir, a character that I was interested in. Just poof. And also the romance is a complete mess, and there's a minor breakup that didn't make sense and was dismissed, and the characters were all fine again afterward. I wouldn't call it fine again myself. And I don't think the characters would make a fire when they're being hunted so close like they were. And, well, I thought that one thing that could save this from being a total 0 is if it ends on a cliffhanger. I know this is a standalone book. I kind of hate standalone books generally. But I thought, okay, maybe if this ends on a nice cliffhanger, then maybe I'll think about it more often. I'll do some theories. Maybe I might even reread some parts to theorize. That's what good books do. But no, it went for the lowest common denominator I think possible. It went for the worst idea ever to end this book. And I kept thinking, come on, you're holding on by a thread. Are you gonna leave a mystery? Nope. Gone. This book is a total mess. I pretty much like nothing in this book. Yeah, don't read The Glass Arrow. I would really suggest not taking a look at it. So there you have it. Those were my 10 least favorite books of 2016 that I read in 2016. So, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of others later, but I hope that the best is better. Oh, and one thing I should tell you before signing off, I was going to do my top 10 best and worst movies of the year, but I've seen some top 10s, and I realized that I still want to watch a few more movies before I finish off these lists. I guess I was procrastinating a lot, or I was too busy to see them, or I'm kind of a poor person who doesn't have a job right now and can't really afford to go to the cinema all the time, or shouldn't go to the cinema all the time to be smart with my money. But anyway, I will watch them soon. Maybe I'll have these 2 videos of my top 10 best and top 10 worst movies of 2016 in early January. Probably early January. So for now, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I didn't insult any of your reading tastes while watching this video, and, well, hope you had a good reading year.